Hi, my name is Kip Carr, and I am recording an oral history to talk about my involvement in the Jefferson County NAACP and civil rights in the Eastern Panhandle. And the main reason why I'm doing this is to put it on the record, particularly because Uh, since I have been away from that area since like the mid 90s, um, a lot of the activities and things that I was involved in, um, there may be people that's on the scene right now that may not know. So I just wanted to kind of put this out there so the record will reflect that in addition to my political involvement in my early 20s, I was also involved in civil rights. So I kind of want to talk about that. Let me just kind of lay the groundwork. In 1984, which was 40 years ago, I was elected as the president of the Kentucky State Youth and College Division. Actually, it was January of 1984. Then my family moved from Kentucky to West Virginia later that same year. And I didn't really resign, but it really, I wasn't able to function since I had moved out of state. And when I got involved in West Virginia, I looked up the NAACP and found that there was a very active branch in Charlestown and started attending meetings. And somehow I was nominated for and was elected as an at-large executive committee member. So this was pretty historic because I was 17 years of age and I was elected to the executive committee of the branch. I don't believe they had an active youth council at that time. Um, I believe that would make me one of the youngest, if not the youngest person ever to be elected to an at-large executive committee position on a branch level anywhere in the country. So, I attended meetings, and let me just say, I was in high school. I think I was a junior. I was junior in high school, and uh, there was nobody that was active in the branch that was in their 20s, 30s. I think at that time there might have been a few people in their late 40s, but the majority of the active members were in their 50s and 60s, and some in their 70s. Um, let's see, what do I really remember. One thing that sticks out at me is that there was a scholarship, Martin Luther King scholarship, and one particular year, uh, what I remember is uh, the recipients would typically get, I think it was like a $500 scholarship at that time. And for Jefferson High School, there were three recipients. There was a white male, and there were two black females. And what I recall is the white male received the full $500 scholarship. The two African American females, I think, were forced to split the $500. So I believe they received $250 apiece. Added insult to injury, the white male just happened to be the son of the guidance counselor at the high school. And I don't know. I remember bringing it to the branch's attention. I can't remember if anything was done about it. Um, I will say that the young people like myself that were involved and active and engaged, it's certainly not like today in the 2020s, where young people are usually listened to and taken seriously. I don't think that anything that I brought, I don't think anybody was actually paying attention to anything that I said. So I'm not, I'm just being realistic about it. I think people appreciated my involvement. They had no problem with me actually attending meetings. But in terms of listening to me or trying to get the perspective of someone who was like Gen X, they really weren't interested in that at all. So let's see. 19. So the following year, I was elected as a national convention delegate, which I believe the national convention, the national NAACP convention, was in Dallas, Texas that year. I was unable to attend because I was serving as a Senate page in on Capitol Hill. So I wasn't able to go to the national convention. However, the state convention was in Harpers Ferry that year. So the Jefferson County branch was the host branch for the state convention. I do remember attending that convention, and I believe I was an AXA. I think there was an AXO competition on the state level, uh, original oratory. I did not. Uh, I only competed on the state level. I did not compete at national. So let's see. What else do I remember about 1985? That was really about it. Um, I remember the meetings. I think it was St. Philip's Church in Charlestown. I never missed a meeting at all. Never missed a executive committee meeting or a general membership meeting. And I remember becoming very frustrated at the fact that I don't that number one, there was not an active youth council, and I did not feel that that the branch leadership was doing enough to stimulate any type of engagement of people in my generation. So what I did, 1986, rather than run again as an at-large member of the executive committee, I, Kip Carr, nominated myself to run for president of the branch. And I remember I ran simply to make a point. I didn't have any illusions of actually like trying to win, but I was trying to make a point that people in my age group needed to be listened to. It was very disconcerting that we did not have an active youth council at all. So that was part of that that was part of what what led me to run, and I was met with so much resistance. Number one, they told me first, they said that I couldn't run, and then I had to point out, I had to like open the bylaws and said yes I do. I had to, anytime that there was not an active youth council at that time, anyone who was 17 years of age could run for branch positions. You know, there were so many attempts to try to dissuade me from running. And then when they realized that I had every legal right to run, it was, I was treated very, very disrespectfully. All right. Like almost like, how dare you? Who are you? What are you trying to do? And there was one person that I think understood my point of what I was trying to do. And, you know, when I write an autobiography, I think I'll maybe name names in that. But so I received one vote, which was my own, and the person that won ultimately won. I think the first statement is, since this turned out the way I thought it would. Like, wow. I mean, so going into 1986, 1987, my involvement in that branch kind of dwindled. I was very disillusioned, and it was just very unfortunate. You know, I don't remember there being. I think there were attempts to activate a youth council, but I don't think it held. I certainly don't remember attending a youth council meeting the whole time I was there at all. Um, if there's anybody who was active and involved in like the mid 80s, and if you have a different experience, please let me know. I'm just talking about what my experience was. So let's see. 1986, I did attend the national convention, which happened to be in Baltimore that year. And 1986 was the year that the National NAACP office moved from Brooklyn to Baltimore. And everybody was really excited about that. And I remember I commuted back and forth with other branch members to Baltimore. We did not spend the night. We just kind of made a day trip, attended some of the sessions, and then drove back. Because it was just an hour and a half or so downtown Baltimore. One of the things that I do remember about that convention was there was a membership laydown, and I was, I guess, selected to present, I guess, a check to the national NAACP leadership. And if you've been to national conventions, you know about the membership laydown, where you put the monies that represent the memberships that you have collected over the previous year or so. While I was on stage, I met. There was an older adult board member. I can't remember where he was from, but I think he was a member of the clergy that introduced me to Alfonso Ribeiro, who was at the convention. And at that time, he was on this program, the sitcom Silver Spoons. If you're in my age group, I'm sure you remember, with Rick Schroeder and who else was in there. Can't remember, but at any rate, and then of course he was known for that Pepsi commercial that he did with Michael Jackson. I'm sorry that there are no pictures that that exist that can document that, but I just remember that happened. I remember seeing him on stage. I remember, if had I not been selected to be part of the membership laydown, I know I probably would have never met him. So let's see, what else. Okay, 19. What else I remember in the interim period? Moved to Atlanta. Got very involved with the Atlanta branch. That was, they had moved in 1988, 1986. This was when Julian Bond was still president of the local branch in Atlanta. And got very involved. I'm trying to think of where the convention was in '88. God, I can't remember. I'm drawing a blank, and I usually know just like that. like where it was. I know it wasn't. I know it was in Atlanta in '98. I just can't remember '88. Any rate, now in Detroit, I remember the convention in '89 because I was at that convention. It was in downtown Detroit. And then what was notable about 1989 was that I moved back from Atlanta to West Virginia, and I did get back involved with the NAACP. What I do remember was in 1990, which I was heavily involved politically, and you have to watch my video where I talk about being the first African American to run for the Democratic Executive Committee at Jefferson County. That same year, I participated at the state convention, the West Virginia State NAACP convention, which was at Harper's Ferry, at Cliffside. I think it's a Clarion Hotel now. And the notable thing about that particular convention, there was an observance, a remembrance of the Niagara Movement leaders, because the Niagara Movement, which led to the founding of the NAACP, one of the initial meetings that was held was on the campus of Storer College in Harpers Ferry. And it was really very meaningful to be part of that experience. I think I was able to actually speak. I think I spoke at one of the events. I remember getting up and speaking I think at the church that's on the Storer campus, the Storer College campus. I hate that we have no pictures and certainly no video of any of that. And my mother, so let me just back up. I was very involved. I got involved in NAACP due to my mother, who was membership chair, and then she became an area director of the Kentucky NAACP, and then she was youth advisor. And then when we moved to West Virginia, she kind of pulled out of NAACP, but I kind of stayed active and stayed involved. I think if I had had a parent that was still involved, I probably would have stayed in. And I really, I got mentors later, but not initially. Sometime in the early '90s, I think it was '91, but definitely by '92, I had I had relocated to Berkeley County, to Martinsburg. And at that time, there was a renegade branch president. And what I recall, there was a pastor, a very charismatic young pastor in Martinsburg. And then this older African American gentleman that seemed to be very intimidated by this charismatic pastor. And following a meeting on the sidewalk of the church, there was what's been described as the famous pushing and shoving incident, where the president of the branch pushed this guy, and I remember seeing it. And this guy decided just to kind of throw out all rules and operate the way he wanted to operate. Sound familiar? What I do recall, there was a high school chapter at Martinsburg High School. I do not know if this was an official chapter that was recognized and chartered by the national office. However, I do know that there was a high school chapter that was organized. This branch president went to the principal of this high school, and somehow he found out that there were monies that was being held at the high school in the name of this high school chapter. Now, I want you to pay very close attention to what I'm about to say, because I remember all of this like it was 3 or 4 days ago. This guy went to the high school, demanded this money, And I think the principal, rather than to push back or argue, I think he just kind of wanted to be done with the whole situation. They wrote this gentleman a check. I can't remember if they wrote it to him personally or if they wrote it to the branch. Regardless, he went to the bank and he cashed the check and he put the money in his pocket. And how do I know? Is because I went to we were able to obtain a copy of the canceled check, and there were codes on the back of the check. And there was a code, I think it was CC, and I had the bank officials, I think this was like a vice president of the bank, to confirm for me in writing what exactly that meant. And what it meant was the check was cashed. It wasn't transferred in any other account. Basically, this gentleman pocketed this money. So I remember he was ultimately suspended, removed, or whatever. And that was basically the extent of my involvement. I know that it took a while for the branch to reactivate, but I just want to highlight the fact that I was extremely involved, and the late Dr. Taylor Perry was a tremendous mentor to me. And I can't say enough about George Rutherford and the late Jim Talbert, who I call the godfathers of civil rights in Eastern West Virginia. One of the things that even long after I left West Virginia, they would spot me at a national NAACP convention, and they were always so excited to see me. And I remember we went to Rockford, Illinois. God, I think this was like '94 for a regional conference, and we, from the part of West Virginia we were in, which was, if you're familiar with West Virginia on the map, the Panhandle, and specifically where we were right here at my thumbnail. Okay, the tip end of West Virginia. And so we had to travel all the way to Wisconsin. This was basically the same region. Well, not really. I said Wisconsin. Basically, Rockford was not far from the Wisconsin line. And I felt at that time that West Virginia, particularly our side of West Virginia, had way more in common with Maryland and Virginia. Maryland and Virginia and DC is in another region, Region 7. There were branches, NAACP branches in Hagerstown, Maryland, as well as Winchester, Virginia, that were both not far from Jefferson County. Oh, and also Loudoun County. But because they were in a completely different region, we had to coordinate with people all the way in Michigan and Ohio, and so going to NAACP conventions and being part of a state that had like maybe 2 or 3 active delegates. Because I came from Kentucky. Kentucky had just maybe only a few more than West Virginia that showed up at national NAACP meetings. And then you see, Michigan. I can't remember a time that Michigan did not have a lot of people at conventions. The Detroit NAACP has the largest Freedom Fund banquet anywhere in the country. It has been known for that for years. I mean, even when I was a little person. I do remember while I was in West Virginia, somehow um, connecting with Joe Madison. And this was the time that he was actually on the national board. He was a board member that was elected by the delegates at the National NAACP convention. And, we would talk by phone periodically about all the internal NAACP politics, which was always very, very interesting. Um, and it was really good, and that I remember having his home phone number, and this was in the day before people did email. um, but I appreciated the fact that he always took the time to talk. And when we talked, I mean, we talked for at least 2 or 3 hours or so. Not very often, but maybe like once a month or so. I remember and I hate saying the word so many times. I deeply apologize for that. I need to work on that. Um, I When he passed recently, it made me think back to those days. And I've seen some pictures on social media that shows him meeting with people in Jefferson County. I didn't remember that. I was around, but I don't remember. Um, I don't. I don't. I don't know what I was doing or where I was. But he was very involved. He initially was the voter protection director, and he left that position. And I believe he should have been CEO of the NAACP. I think the association probably would have been in a completely different direction had he been in charge. And who knows? Maybe he would have been destined for other things other than a very successful podcast on Sirius XM. So who knows? Who knows? Um, what else do I remember about my time up there in civil rights? I remember. Um, let's see, what was it? 1987. There was one of our branch members, the late Thelma Miller, that ran for mayor of Ranson, and sitting on the steps of Ranson City Hall waiting for the results. And that was when Mr. Hamill, and I understand he passed away a few years ago. That was his first election. That was when he first got elected as mayor of Ranson. So, the one thing I wish, I don't know what the situation is today currently. I wish that there were people in my age group that were active and involved and engaged. And I think part of it is there was not anything that was inviting for people of color that were in their mid-teens, late teens, early 20s. So this was that what we now call the Next Gen initiative. Um, you know, uh, Even in my time at Shepherd, there was no Shepherd college chapter. This is before Shepherd became a university. So I'm trying to think of what else. That's probably it. I'm gonna have to glean from articles, maybe some old newspaper articles, for additional comment. Now, uh, so I have West Virginia Blue Book from 1992, And in it, I I know that there are some states that put books together of like their whole government structure. I know, let's see, Texas does it, California does it. When I lived in West Virginia, the Blue Book was something that if you were politically inclined or involved, this was something that you knew about, and it's something that was on your shelf. So the reason why I have this Blue Book is because I'm actually listed in here as a member of the State Democratic Executive Committee. And I was the first African American that to serve from Eastern Panhandle, West Virginia, on any political party executive committee. Now, this is separate from my civil rights involvement. And how this came about is that West Virginia has a very unique way of electing members to the state executive committee. First of all, I don't know if this is still the case in 2024. I believe it is, but correct me if it's not. However, in 1990, these positions were on the primary election ballot. And every senatorial district could elect, I believe it was 2 men and 2 women. There could not be more than 2 from one county. If that happens, if you have 3 people who run and receive a more votes than anyone else in that senatorial district, it creates a vacancy because I don't care if you have 1,000,000 votes. If you have 1,000,000 votes and the other 2 vote getters from that same county have like 50,000 and 35,000, because of the arcane rules of the party, and I believe this is in West Virginia code, no more than 2 from a county, regardless of gender, can be elected. That happened in 1990, and I was able to find that there was a vacancy. There was a vacancy that existed. I don't remember there being any kind of public disclosure of this vacancy. It was just a random thing that insiders knew about. So somehow someone made me aware of it, and what I did was I contacted the Democratic chairs of the old 16th senatorial district, which at that time was not just Berkeley, Jefferson, and Morgan, but it was Hardy, Hampshire, and Mineral. And I believe Mineral County is where Henry Louis Gates is from. However, we had a state executive committee meeting. I believe it was 91. And the Democratic chairs, which were older white men, put my name up to the full committee, and I was elected. I believe I was elected by acclamation. I don't know to this day how I was able to win the support of these Democratic county chairs. And let me just say that this was a time that when you take Jefferson Berkeley out of the equation, you really did not have people of color involved politically throughout West Virginia, and certainly not in this district. Due to the delegate selection plan that is set forth by the Democratic National Committee, they put in place affirmative action committees, and I was designated as the chair for the second congressional district at that time. And part of my responsibility was to make sure that not just county leaders, county party leaders, but other key stakeholders were aware of the delegate selection plan. And because I believe that convention delegates in West Virginia are also elected on the primary ballot. And because I ran for Democratic convention delegate. And what I like is, when the parties, when the campaigns, they pick their slates, then you're notified that if you didn't make the slate, you can still run as uncommitted. Now, uncommitted delegates can never actually become delegates, but they still allow you the option of remaining on the ballot. And that's what I chose. Let's see, I think it was Clinton that ran in 92. I can't remember who all was on the ballot in West Virginia. It could have been Brown, Songas, Bob Kerrey. However, once I think Clinton was the main candidate in the primary. Once his campaign chose a slate, and they generally made up of the party insiders, of which I was not, despite being on the committee. I was on the ballot, and I believe I have the 93 Blue Book. It actually lists the fact that I ran as a delegate. If it's not in the Blue Book, I believe it's on the West Virginia Secretary of State's election result page. You just scroll in the drop down menu, pull up 92, and you can find that. I wanted to put this on the record because you can't have a conversation talking about people being trailblazers when you have individuals like myself who was not just active politically, but also involved deeply in the civil rights movement as well. So I wanted to put this on the record because I want people to know. Even when I left West Virginia in 1994, in the fall of 1994, went back to Kentucky. I was in Kentucky for 3 years, where the NAACP in my hometown was not active at all, and I started a political organization from scratch and organized some political forums and such. But I was a poll manager in West Virginia. Then when I moved back to Kentucky, became a clerk and served in several capacities here in Georgia. I will say that my involvement in West Virginia did spur my involvement in other areas. I was actually approached as being the secretary of the Berkeley County NAACP. And I didn't realize at that time just how important and how pivotal the role of secretary is in an NAACP unit. I didn't get it at that time. In 2005, I was elected as secretary of the Georgia NAACP, and I served for 3 terms. The last time I ran again. I had two opponents, and I was able to modernize the office and created training opportunities for local unit secretaries. I met with other state secretaries and other state conferences to see exactly what they were doing. But all of that would not have been possible if it were not for my involvement in West Virginia. And I can't say enough about it. I do hope to come back one year for the Heritage activities that are in August. And I would like to be involved in any type of Black History events, such as maybe next year. I have nothing but warm memories of my 10 years that I lived in the Panhandle, and it has served me well. When the teachers went on strike a few years ago, I proudly put on my page, the political insight that you see is courtesy of West Virginia teachers. Um, that's, I just wanted to put it out there so it is part of the official record. And in particular, uh, I know that one of my mentors, John Johnson, that was with the National NAACP, and before that was the president of the Kentucky NAACP, was the youngest person ever elected as branch president anywhere in the United States. I believe it was Franklin, Kentucky, his hometown. Uh, I've never heard of anyone younger than me or my age at that time actually elected to an at-large executive committee position. Um, so I just wanted to put it out there. I don't know about any young people in their late teens, early 20s elected as perhaps a secretary or a treasurer of a branch. But my involvement in the Jefferson County NAACP has served me well. I have nothing but very warm memories of it, and I continue to wish them nothing but the absolute best in fighting for the rights of all people. They have a very rich history, going back, you know, literally to the founding of the NAACP, back 115 years ago in 1909, and here we are in 2024. Lynchings were the primary issue back in the early 20th century, and today, we cannot have a conversation without talking about police brutality, talking about the curriculum and African American history being taught in schools or being taken out of schools. Lots of things that our NAACP units are involved and engaged in. And I would be remiss if I did not mention that I was elected this past October as first vice president of the Georgia NAACP. Uh, I only it only became official because there was some election controversy that had to be worked out. But I am now officially the first vice president of the state conference here in Georgia, and I owe it all to my direct involvement uh, in the Jefferson County NAACP. Maybe I can come back one year for any type of special events that you have. Um, I got a class reunion coming up in a few years. But let's see. I would definitely love to come back and share about my activism, my involvement, and help anyone uh, be involved and be active and be engaged. I think it's just so critically important to be involved, not just during election years, but in that space between elections. You have people always active, those who want to be active and informed during election years, and then once the election is over, then people just tend to drop off. And we need to understand that the off years are very, very important. We need to stay engaged. We need to stay involved all of the time. We don't have the luxury of just going to sleep when the last election results come in. We still have to be involved. We still need to hold all of our leaders accountable. And do all that we can to strengthen our units, increase our membership, and uh, that's the way that we're thriving together. No matter if we're in a rural area, and we have lots of rural areas here in Georgia that's similar to West Virginia. I think North Georgia kind of reminds me of West Virginia. And then you have South Georgia. Um, so, but none of that could have been possible. I don't know if I would have been active, if my activism would have continued, even though I got my start in Kentucky, but it continued in West Virginia. But if it were not for West Virginia, I don't know. I honestly don't know if I would have still been involved, all of these years later. That's all I wanted to say. I want you to have a wonderful and productive day. And I have a feeling we'll be talking real soon. Until then, take good care.